Um, I'm doing too much today, so probably most of it badly. But primarily, I want to correct this consensus about the Merchant of Venice and the need to apologize for the thing. But also, because of the 400th anniversary, I am interested in the first folio oddities. There are mostly the paginations, which seem to be errors or the result of hastiness, are not. And I'm convinced and have been convinced that mathematics, sacred mathematics, geometry, and other matters, esoteric, are involved. I want to make some Venice connections and ultimately an Oxfordian edition to come out of this. After Twelfth Night recently, I'm about halfway through an edition of the Comedy of Errors that I'm producing in collaboration with Jennifer Newton. But I've already started an edition of The Merchant of Venice too, because I think it's important that we get this one Oxfordian. All right, first, Shakespeare he has this addiction to interdisciplinary matters. And in Twelfth Night, this reference to the picture of we three is obscure and not visual, but basically it's a joke reference to some image where you'd have two jackasses and you look at it and the title is we three and you think, wait a minute, hey, I got that because you're the third. So it's kind of an involvement in the art. It is the early version of optical illusion art from the 60s where artists try to get a 3D effect or kind of a buzzing motion effect on the canvas. For Shakespeare, he in Italy would have seen these illusions, this fake art where you're not probably convinced that you're seeing through a skylight, but you might be convinced that you're seeing a dome or a 3D image, and you're not, it's flat. They might have called it anamorphosis to be fancy, but perspective art is the term that keeps coming up. And you know that Shakespeare loves this because he refers to it again and again. When the twins get together at the end of Twelfth Night, it's like, wait a minute, what? There's two of them? It's like a perspective. Or for Cleopatra, you look at Antony one way and he's like a monster, but another way, he's a god of war. Here's an example from the 16th century where you take a stiff piece of paper or cardboard and accordion fold it, and in every other slat, you can draw Mary Queen of Scots, and then in the other ones you put a skull there, and aren't we clever? So depending on where you're positioned and where you're looking at it, you see something different. Patrick Hughes, I think, is still working in the current mode where if you are, this is actually an installation. If you are on one side, you're seeing mostly door. And as you walk over, you'll see the doors kind of shrink and then you're seeing mostly outside. Another interesting phenomenon about this, though, is that you'd swear to God those doors are moving. In Henry V, whether Henry's seeing the princess or he's seeing cities, depends on how you view him. Shakespeare says in Sonnet 24 that this is the coolest thing that painters can do. It's a special effect that you can get in art. And he comes out in Richard II most clearly about what he's talking about here. Perspectives, which rightly gazed upon, show nothing but confusion. But if you look at things the right way, you'll see what you're supposed to. Is this just a goofy experiment? It's like Magic Eye a few years ago, where this elongated Edward VI has to be viewed from the side if you're going to see anything clear. Now, especially in Mantua, northern Italy, Shakespeare would have seen Giulio Romano. You know, he's the one artist Shakespeare ever mentions by name in The Winter's Tale. Giulio Romano does this stuff all over the place. This is just a cheesy little alleyway, but you'd swear that there's scalloping going on there, and it's not. It's absolutely flat. You got to stand in the right place to see it, but it's absolutely flat. I went to the Palazzo del Te and saw the Room of the Horses. Big deal. And it wasn't until I revisited it and stood in the right place where I realized, wait a minute, that's not just a flat painting, I thought suddenly. Now it looks like it's a statue on a ledge, but it's not. It is a flat painting, just made to look like it's 3D. Same with these statues, flat. And this cathedral, later than Shakespeare could have seen, but it's a really good example of what they were working on in Italy, where you would swear you could reach out and touch some of these figures. Others are a mile away. Realize, though, you have to be standing in the right place for the 3D effect. If you got to go up and touch up St. Peter's nose and you get the scaffolding up there, everything's going to be out of whack. So here are some modern crude examples. You look at it one way, or another way. And these famous interwebs things where you can see these illusions. This is actually Mantua. Wasn't there when I was, but I didn't realize. I saw this image a long time ago. Never realized, hey, I walked on there. I probably had an Aperol spritz along there somewhere. So to here, and here we've got a famous image from the 16th century where we seem to be celebrating all our accomplishments. And students these days can figure out what that blob is down below, because I think we are more flexible with our visual knowledge or visible, abilities, and they'll realize, okay, that's a skull. But at the time, you probably had to look at it askew to be reminded that these are the mere things of this earth. Think about your soul. And the reason I bring all this up is because I think Shakespeare would have seen this special effect and would have thought, how can I get this in literature, in drama, and theater? And he succeeded. Henry V, you look at it one way, and the predominant way, and people will say this is a hero-worshiping, flag-waving, nationalistic, glorious play about the best king ever. But you got to ignore some of these features, and you look at it another way, and you realize this is an expose of the most soulless, imperialist bastard who ever walked the face of the earth and killed his friends. Taming of the Shrew. Oh, we so want this to be sexist because Shakespeare was a man of his time, and that's just the way people thought about women. No, that's the consensus. You look at it another way, and you're missing what is really revealed in that. I'm doing a presentation, I hope, in the fall for the SOF in the conference about this one, and trying to correct some misinterpretations about that one too. And now we come to Merchant of Venice. Here, well, alas, Shakespeare was a man of his time, and he hated Jews, and probably was pretty racist too. Didn't seem like that in all the other plays, nor did he seem like a sexist in all the other plays. But, what are you going to do except apologize for him and say he's excused because it was 400 years ago and everybody thought that. There's no excuse. Just because you were born 400 years ago doesn't mean you can be shitty to other people. And, what's Jesus's excuse for not conforming to his period too? So no, you're not off the hook. And Shakespeare is not what we are insisting on, like Harold F. Bloom here, who says in his chapter about Merchant of Venice, one would have to be blind, deaf, and dumb not to recognize that Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice is profoundly anti-Semitic work. So you'd have to be blind, I guess, like you couldn't see or read the play, or deaf, you couldn't hear the play, and dumb, you couldn't speak, so you couldn't appreciate. Oh, I get it. He's making a pun about stupidity and at the expense of people with an affliction. Fantastic. Well, that's really sensitive. Pile. The consensus that Shakespeare here essentially belongs to his age just this once in regard to the Jews. And I've seen this among critics and students too. We just want Shakespeare to be sexist and anti-Semitic and racist. Is it that, it can make us feel superior in one way to Shakespeare or what? But we're clinging to it. And I'm here to tell you, no, it doesn't work. So there's the quarto, and here's Merchant of Venice, the beginning in the first folio, starting on page 163. We come off of Midsummer Night's Dream in 162, and we go to Merchant of Venice 163, and we turn the page, and it's 162 and 163 again. Okay, and then we're back on track with 166 and 167. Well, that's weird. Actually, if you back up, you go from 160 to 163 to 162 to 163. And what does this mess up? Well, people throw up their hands and say, yeah, he screwed up. Errors in pagination. But I don't believe in it. So if you check out my 12th night edition and look at the errors in pagination there at a significant point, you'll see what I'm starting to get at here. And I've only scratched the surface of this, so I don't really know for sure how deep this goes. However, 162 is an interesting number to keep repeating and getting into this cycle of, because it's useful in cryptography. It's got some special mathematical names too. And 163 especially, which we seem to be insisting on, is considered a lucky prime. It figures in ratios that calculate close to pi and e, and and then we're off. Here we go. But it's also interesting for this context. Apparently, the number of days that you count from the start of Passover to calculate when is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, right? Coincidence, or what are we doing? There's more, and no time. Now, into the play. We start off in this so-called comedy. In sooth, I know why I am so sad. A guy who's completely depressed and says, I don't even know myself, which is a perfect sign that Shakespeare is playing with identity, knowing yourself, and that this guy is off base somehow. Bassanio shows up and says, first thing he says, good seniors both, when shall we laugh? Like we're forcing when we just have to have fun, and it's not going to happen. The whole play is just melancholy and weary, and it seems as if people are straining to amuse themselves. And I think audiences do this too. It's like there's a built-in laugh track, and they think, oh, this was funny back in the day, so I'm supposed to laugh. And there's nothing funny in this play. Second scene, first thing that Portia says, I'm weary too. And I wonder, what's wrong with these people? Is it just what we used to say in the 80s that, when yuppies whine about how unhappy they are or unsatisfied, it's like affluenza? Well, Nerissa isn't taking it. You would be weary if your miseries were in the same abundance as your good fortunes are. And Portia says, pretty snotty, good sentences and well pronounced. And Nerissa sticks with it. Yeah, they'd be better if you listen to the substance of this stuff. Good sentences and well pronounced is a handy phrase, because we've got the language of trials coming, legal matters. We've got blurry language with romance and economics. So good sentences and well pronounced is something to keep in mind as her philosophy. All right, second act, you've got this young Lancelot Gobbo who does a kind of a stand-up thing, which is really painful to watch, I think, but people say, oh, it's really amusing. However, so you got his stand-up, then he plays a practical joke on this blind father. That's hilarious. Portia's going to mock national stereotypes in a moment and people's accents. We mock the elderly. There's a reference to a chimp. That's always fun. No, it's disgusting. And then there's these puns that even a character in the play will say when Lancelot gets a Moorish woman pregnant, and he says, oh, well, the more for me. And he starts punning on more. And even the character Lorenzo in the play says, any jackass can pun on that. So undermining every time there's some sort of comedy in this play is what you can trace. The party that we build up to, where Jessica is going to be in disguise and the young men are going to come around, she's going to elope, and we're all partying because it's Venice and we got masks on and there's going to be music and fun. And some character comes on and says, yeah, it's all off because it's too windy tonight. Undermined every time. By the way, when Lancelot shows up, there's a lot of oddities in the first folio. And all I will say about this one is that editors will change this. Whiter than the paper it writ on is the fair hand that writ. But the folio has I, the fair hand that writ. All right, so I already mentioned Portia mocking all of these international suitors, a situation that only Elizabeth would appear to be relevant with. And then the Prince of Morocco, he's the first guy who's going to pick a box to try to win Portia. The first thing he says, mislike me not for my complexion. He picks the wrong box and leaves, and Portia says, good riddance. Let all of his complexion choose me so. Well, sounds kind of racist. Is Shakespeare supporting this? The people sticking to the anti-Semitic Shakespeare will say, yeah, absolutely. See, and we're supposed to ignore that too, because Shakespeare loves Portia's most wonderful creation. And Harold Bloom himself needs to strap on the drool bucket when he talks about her, it just in these glowing terms that she's so magnificent. But there are some problems. Now we meet, also in the first act, Shylock, who is invited to dinner by Bassanio. And he says, no, to eat of the habitation which your prophet, the Nazarite, conjured the devil into? No. Now, this is interesting because he's referring to an early miracle of Jesus where Jesus drives out a bunch of demons possessing a guy and into a herd of swine who stampede and jump off a cliff, which makes me think, well, aren't the demons going to come out of their dead bodies then? And we're even in worse shape, but I don't understand these matters. Anyway, the interesting thing is that, well, not that Shylock got this wrong. It's not that Christians shouldn't eat pork because Jesus, no. However, what is interesting is that Shylock has puzzled about the New Testament, or this event in the New Testament. He has explored the enemy text. And that is something certainly that these so-called Christians in the play have not done. Now, he's going to lend Antonio the money. But Antonio says, you know what? If you lend me the money, that's fine. But we're making a deal here where I'm still going to spit on you and spurn you and kick you and call you a dog. So take it or leave it. And Shylock says, look how you storm. I would be friends with you and have your love. Forget the shames that you have stained me with. Supply your wants and take nothing of usance, no usury for my money. And you're not here. This is kindness I offer. This is kind I offer. Now, if you despise Shylock from the start and you go in with your prejudices, you're going to think, he's tricking him, he's like suckering him in and all that. And you can find lines that make Shylock absolutely reprehensible. But what if right here, he is just pointing out, look at the irony of this situation. You're coming to me for money, and yet you treat me like crap. And look, I'm going to give you the money. I'm not even going to charge you interest. And this is kindness I offer. Bassanio, standing right there, says to Antonio, this is kindness. And Antonio says, no, this is rubbish. And he just gets absolutely vicious at Shylock. Was this a moment where Shylock was trying to teach them something and it just got absolutely stomped out? I think so, because there's an exactly similar moment in Henry V where Henry gets his gift from the Dauphin. What is it? It's tennis balls. And he goes off about, how he's going to bashing the brains of children for generations of the French because of this joke. And his uncle, after this diatribe, says, this was a merry message, and usually delivered with this heavy irony. This was a merry message. But what if he was saying, what in hell is wrong with you? This was a joke gift, and you're flying off the handle. Well, same thing, I think, in Merchant of Venice, if you're willing to offer a little tolerance here. Here's proof that Shylock is horrible, because his own daughter says, our house is hell. And how old is she? What, 15? A 15-year-old saying our house is hell? Is that testimony that's going to hold up in court? Shylock's going to go to this party and leave her behind, and she's going to elope, and we're tugged back and forth. He's thinking about not going. Oh, thank God he's going. He's thinking about not going. And one of the moments he thinks about not going is there's some ill brewing towards, I did dream of money bags. See, typical Jew, thinking of money all the time, avariciously. No, look at that more carefully. He dreams of money bags, and that's a bad sign to him. It's not about the money. When he finds out that his daughter has absconded and robbed him blind, he's running around the streets, absolutely horrified, my daughter and my ducats. This is reported by some dunces in the play. And, he's mocked by these kids too. And the interpretation is, see, he can't even distinguish from his own flesh and blood from his money. But is that really the case, or is it just the horror? I mean, my stupid brother stole from my parents, and it was just devastating to them psychologically. So give the guy a break, please. And besides, later on, he says, would she were at my foot. Oh, my God. He wants his own daughter dead and the ducats in the coffin. It's not about the money. It's the whole horror, the mind-blowing horror of this. And he wants it all gone. Is he literally bloodthirsty for a victim here. All right, second guy opens up a box, gets it wrong, and gets a picture of a blinking idiot. As for Shylock's main speech, I don't know how you're going to reconcile this if you have gone into this play insisting that he's an absolute villain. But it's this famous speech. Hath not a Jew eyes, hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? Why, revenge. Villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction. And I just realized that's pretty cool. The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and I will better the instruction. In other words, revenge. Payback. A money thing. And he doesn't use the money language. And I will better the instruction with interest. I will pay you back with interest for what you've done. Now, more important than that is one of these jokers he's speaking to should have interrupted him somewhere and said, there's where you're wrong, Jew. But they don't. And that says a lot. Where should they have interrupted him? Well, if a Jew wrong a Christian, what's going to happen? Christians will get revenge. And somebody should have had the Christian understanding to say, no, that's not what Christianity is about. It's about forgiveness. But they don't, because they're lunkheads and they don't understand their own religion, much less have any tolerance for learning anything about anybody else's. Afterwards, this Tubal character, this is creepy. He tells Shylock that Antonio has had some losses. Oh, that's good. Your daughter blew a ton of money. Oh my God, no. Yeah, but Antonio, he's having bad luck. Ooh, that's good. But your daughter, she bought a monkey. Oh, that's horrible. And she took one of your late wife's rings and sold it for, oh no, that's, and he goes back and forth with Antonio, your daughter, Antonio, your daughter. This has been seen as post-hypnotic torture. Shylock actually says, you're torturing me, Tubal, to hear about what my daughter's doing with this extravagances. And this Tubal disappears as just this creepy, shadowy figure in the back. Well, Bassanio picks the right box and he opens it up. And what's there? Fair Portia's counterfeit, which I guess everybody assumes means that that's a possessive apostrophe rather than a contraction. Fair Portia is counterfeit. And I got to say, yes. Finally, Act 4, the big time, Shylock meets Shyster. In she comes with her identity theft, which is supposed to be so delightful, and says that the quality of mercy is not strained. It has a gentle heaven, and everybody goes ooh and ah for Portia. But what is this mercy and forgiveness and gentility going to amount to when it's time to squash Shylock? It's going to be good sentences and well pronounced, and nothing about mercy. I don't want to push this too far, but I'm curious. I've seen lots of different productions of this, and when the Duke initially addresses Shylock, he says, "We all think that you're going to do the right thing, and you make your point, and then not follow through here, right, Jew? I expect a gentle answer." And he says, "Well, a gentle answer is not in my bond." But I've seen different productions where it seems as if it might have been, was Shylock really going to go through with this? This edition will have him go for it, stop, shake, back up, and then he really goes for it before Portia says, tarry a little. But there are other ones where you wonder, is he just trying finally again to make a point with these Christians? And it never works, and they immediately shut him down. And what is the sadistic thing going on when Portia finally realizes, tarry a little? Did the Holy Spirit of law just finally come down on her and she realizes, wait, there's a flaw here? Or did she wait for that moment because she knew what she was going to do? Well, nobody thinks about that because it's such high drama at the moment. All right, so we completely obliterate Shylock and we never see him again for the entire Act 5. Jessica, look how the floor of heaven is laid with patens of bright gold. Isn't that romantic? Evening in Italy. Patens of bright gold. Those would be little metal discs. Now, I'm going to zip through this from being in Venice, where I saw these guys who I always think are crooked. Paul Edmondson knew there was an Oxfordian in the room. Didn't like the stink of that. But Stanley Wells was all right. Anyway, there's a production where Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the Duke, playing the Duke a few years ago in Venice, because it was the 500th anniversary of the Jewish ghetto. So you could see a production there. Anyway, as you may remember or know, in Venice, Colleen Moriarty and I found these documents where Oxford's trying to get into and see these private chambers where, if you're up against the Concilio de Dieci, this might be your last view of the world, because you were a traitor and they condemned you, you go to prison, and they kill you. What's taken us so long? Anyway, Oxford wanted to get into these places. And as I confess in an upcoming newsletter article, I'm still trying to work on this and find, are there connections between the art and the works of Shakespeare? And I wonder about this one. I don't want to push it too far, but this one's called In the Concilio de Dieci. Oxford would have seen this in 1575. Juno showering grace upon Venice. Grace, that's cold, hard cash coming down there. And that's the way Venice thinks of itself, just reveling in not just the money, but something about the aesthetics of the wealth too. And so when this character looks up in heaven and sees patterns of bright gold, is he talking about the stars are like coins up there? All right. And then finally, Portia comes home and talks about, isn't that weird how the light is so faint, but when a big light comes around, it basically eclipses it. And you could think about, okay, is that the way we're thinking about Judaism versus Christianity? But she also goes on with these other odd analogies. The crow doth sing as sweetly as the lark when neither is attended. In other words, if you didn't have larks around to compare with, a crow going, would sound like a really good song. I know, let's get rid of dissenting voices, and then the rubbish that we spew, there's nothing to compare it to. So it's going to be fine. And we got rid of Shylock. And there's even a reference to eclipsing, getting rid of. And then finally, you got the rings where, the rings have just gone in a ring and circle and nobody betrayed anybody. And it's a big joke, but it's also a symbol of this insulated group that you can never break into. You're always on the outside. And I just decide that we've got a conspiracy of faux Christian economic tyrants obliterating the dissenting voice and offering no perspective on any of this. I don't think we're appreciating Shakespeare enough. You might remember Ian Haste coming up with this. Vera is a specific term for a wedding ring in Venice, but the plural would be vir. So why do you have this superfluous couple, the superfluous final ring that you get here, Nerissa's ring? Now, I don't want to push this last bit too much, but because it's not the only time Nerissa is spelled with two R's, but this weird faith. It's supposed to be keeping safe Nerissa's ring. It's not the only time we have this F for an S either. But I'm told, and I can't say this with confidence, is it an anagram for Sephiron Sephiros, which is another Jewish calendar designation involving marriages and rings. But actually, it's not, because if you do the work there, you realize, it's missing an I. All right, never mind. So is Minerva Britannia missing an I. And you might remember that this bit with the code, thy name is Devere, almost we have an I there, but maybe it's not there. And there's a lot of debate about that. Shakespeare's sonnets, why isn't there a number 1? Did they run out of ones already on the first page? It's like they could have used an I, unless they were missing that too. Here's a crummy poem. It ends with lies and my mistress's eye. It should be eyes. It's missing an eye. It's like the missing eye of Horus, And these ancient Egyptians, they are such plagiarists, where you got this nephew who must avenge the death of his father against his uncle. As long as we're in Egypt, what's missing on the top of that? If it ever is, there's a debate there. But the proto Freemasons seem to know something about that. Whatever secret societies are going on. And You know, I, there's the rub. In the first folio, it's the letter I, there's the rub. It's like the ego. And here, Richard the second needs to get rid of his I too. He's saying, oh, no. Is he going to give back the crown? No, no. I know no I, maybe is what the pun is. Knowing no I, for I must nothing be. Is this what every enlightened being has always said? Get rid of the ego, and it's all one. So are we underappreciating Shakespeare and his being enlightened? And I'm convinced that that's what's happening. But I got a lot more work to do. Thanks.